Have you ever felt a strange heaviness at home after attending a funeral, as if the peace in your space suddenly changed? Many people experience this without realizing why. There are sacred warnings in Islam about what should never be brought home after a burial. These divine reminders could be protecting you more than you think. Stay tuned. 1. Don't bring soil or dust from the grave. Many people, out of love or emotion, take a handful of soil from the grave of a loved one, sometimes to remember them or keep as a symbolic gesture. But in Islam, this act carries deeper spiritual consequences that most people don't realize. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our righteous predecessors never encouraged bringing anything physical from a graveyard into the home, especially soil or dust. Why? Because the grave is a place of rest for the dead, not a place to collect mementos for the living. Graveyards are sacred grounds, where souls transition from this world to the next. The soil there carries not just physical matter, but also the spiritual weight of death, sadness, and sometimes the unseen. Bringing it home may invite an atmosphere of heaviness or unease, a subtle but real disturbance in the home's spiritual balance. Islam teaches that peace and purity of the home come through remembrance of Allah, not by holding on to worldly remnants of those who've passed away. If you truly wish to honor someone who has died, do so in the ways the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us, through dua, sadaqah jariyah, ongoing charity, and remembering them with kindness. These acts bring reward to their soul and blessings to your own life without disturbing the boundaries that Allah has placed between the living and the dead. Moreover, keeping grave soil may unintentionally open the door to waswasah, whispers of doubt or fear from shaitan. Some people have reported feeling discomfort, seeing bad dreams, or sensing heaviness after such acts, not because of superstition, but because they unknowingly stepped into a space reserved for the deceased. Islam always calls us to balance emotion with wisdom. We can love deeply while still following divine guidance. So, when you visit the graveyard, go with humility, make sincere dua, and leave everything there as it is. Let the soil rest with the one who has returned to it. As Allah says in the Quran, "From it we created you, and into it we shall return you." By keeping the sanctity of the graveyard intact, you protect your home from unseen harm and fill it instead with light, remembrance, and the mercy of Allah. 2. Avoid bringing funeral clothes. Home without washing after a funeral. The clothes you wore, especially if you attended the burial, carry not just dust or scent, but also the emotional and spiritual energy of the event. Islam places great emphasis on cleanliness, both physical and spiritual, and this extends to what we wear. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, taught that purity is half of faith, at-tahara shatrul iman. So, after attending a funeral, it's recommended to cleanse yourself and your garments before returning to normal daily activities. When we participate in a janazah, funeral, we enter a space where death is present. The angels of mercy and accountability are active, and hearts are heavy with grief. The atmosphere carries intense spiritual vibrations. Out of respect and wisdom, scholars have advised that one should not bring unwashed funeral clothes into the home, especially not into spaces of rest or prayer. These garments may hold traces of soil, tears, or energy from the graveyard that should be purified before mixing with the clean environment of your home. Washing these clothes is not a superstition, it's an act of spiritual hygiene. Just as we make ghusl, ritual bath, after impurity, washing your clothes after a funeral removes unseen residues, and renews your sense of calm and cleanliness. It also symbolizes emotional release, letting go of grief, returning to peace, and focusing on dua for the deceased, rather than holding on to sadness. It's also good practice to perform wudu or take a full ghusl upon returning from the graveyard. Mufti Menk and other scholars often remind us that such acts are not only sunnah-based, but spiritually uplifting. They help the believer transition from the presence of death back to the rhythm of life, with a clean heart and body. When you wash your clothes, recite Bismillah and make a short dua. O Allah, purify me from all impurity, outward and inward. This simple act invites tranquility and keeps the home environment spiritually pure. Remember, Islam is a faith of balance. We respect the dead without letting grief overtake the living. By keeping your garments clean and your spirit uplifted, you allow Allah's barakah to continue flowing in your home, bringing peace, comfort, and renewal after moments of sorrow. 3. Never bring leftover food from the funeral gathering. It's common in many cultures for people to take leftover food home after a funeral. Some do it to avoid waste, while others see it as part of tradition or hospitality. However, from an Islamic and spiritual perspective, this is something we should avoid. Food served during a funeral gathering carries a different emotional and energetic atmosphere. It's meant to comfort the grieving, not to be stored, shared, or eaten later at home. Islam emphasizes not just what we eat, but also where and in what state we eat. After a funeral, emotions are heavy, hearts are sorrowful, and the atmosphere can be filled with pain, remembrance, and even spiritual energy from the event itself. Bringing that food home can symbolically carry those feelings and energies into your private space, disturbing the peace and serenity that every home needs. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, encouraged gatherings after a loss to be simple and focused on prayer and compassion, not feasting or taking food away. In fact, it was recommended that neighbors or relatives send food to the house of the bereaved, not the other way around. This is because the family of the deceased is in a state of mourning and should be cared for, not burdened with distributing or carrying food. When food is associated with grief, tears, and remembrance of death, consuming it later can unconsciously renew feelings of sadness and heaviness. Some scholars also mention that such food often becomes a means of gossip or idle talk about the deceased, which is spiritually harmful and disrespectful. Instead, Islam teaches us to channel that emotional energy into dua and sadaqah, charity. If there is leftover food after a funeral, the best option is to distribute it immediately to the poor or to those attending, ensuring none is wasted. This turns an ordinary act into an act of sadaqah jariyah, benefiting both the deceased and the giver. By doing this, you transform a moment of grief into one of reward. So, rather than bringing funeral food home, let that moment remain sacred and contained. Keep your home a place of nur light and sakoon peace. Let every meal you share there be filled with gratitude and life, not the energy of loss. This small act of mindfulness keeps your home spiritually clean and your heart uplifted with remembrance of Allah. 4. Don't keep flowers or wreaths used at the grave. After a funeral, some people take home the flowers or wreaths placed on or around the grave as a sentimental reminder of their loved one. While this might feel comforting, Islam teaches us to separate emotional attachment from practices that may affect spiritual peace. Flowers placed at a grave serve a specific purpose. They are symbols of respect, not souvenirs to be kept. Once they've been used in a funeral or burial, their role ends there. In Islam, the act of leaving greenery or flowers on a grave has meaning only in that moment. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once placed a fresh palm branch on a grave and said he hoped it would bring light and comfort to the soul of the deceased while it remained fresh. But this act wasn't meant for decoration or remembrance. It was an expression of mercy and a prayer for the person who had passed. Taking those same items home later reverses their purpose. They belong to a space of death and remembrance, not to a living environment that should radiate barakah and positivity. Flowers from the grave may carry emotional weight and a reminder of sorrow. Over time, they wilt and die, subtly reinforcing feelings of loss and heaviness in your home. Islam encourages us to fill our spaces with reminders of life, gratitude, and divine mercy, not with symbols tied to grief. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, taught that remembering death is essential, but it should lead to reflection and righteousness, not attachment to physical reminders that bring sadness. Instead of keeping flowers from a grave, plant something new in memory of your loved one. A tree, a small garden, or even sponsor a plant in a masjid. Every time it grows or someone benefits from it, both you and the deceased earn ongoing reward, sadaqah jariyah. This transforms grief into continuous blessings, turning pain into purpose. Your home should remain a place of renewal and peace, not a continuation of mourning. Let the flowers stay where they belong, as a mark of respect in the resting place of your loved one. By leaving them behind, you allow their soul to rest in peace, and your own heart to heal with the light and mercy of Allah. 5. Avoid bringing water, used for washing the deceased. In Islamic tradition, the washing of the deceased, ghusl al-mayyit, is a sacred act, one of respect, purification, and preparation for their return to Allah. The water used in this process carries immense spiritual significance. It is not ordinary water. It has come into contact with a body that has completed its journey in this world. For this reason, Islam teaches us to treat that water with the utmost care and never to bring it home. When a Muslim passes away, their body is washed with clean water, often mixed with camphor or cedar, lotus leaves, following the sunnah of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The purpose is to purify the deceased before burial, returning them to the earth in a state of dignity and cleanliness. Once this sacred act is complete, the used water should be respectfully disposed of in a pure place, away from living areas, homes, or sources of regular use. This is done to preserve both physical and spiritual hygiene. Bringing such water home, even unintentionally, can disturb the atmosphere of purity within your space. It carries traces of what was once part of a deeply spiritual but somber ritual, a boundary between the world of the living and the departed. Islam always maintains a clear separation between these two realms, reminding us that peace for the dead comes from dua and mercy, not from physical connections to their cleansing water or burial items. Moreover, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, emphasized cleanliness as a means of protection. Just as we are encouraged to wash after attending a funeral or visiting a grave, we must also ensure that items associated with death remain outside the home. This isn't out of fear or superstition, but out of deep respect for the sanctity of both life and death. If you wish to honor the one who has passed, the best form of remembrance is through istighfar, seeking forgiveness for them, and acts of charity in their name. These deeds reach their soul directly, unlike any material trace brought into your living space. By keeping the washing water away from your home, you preserve the spiritual harmony of your household, ensuring it remains a place filled with rahmah, mercy, serenity, and divine protection. It's a simple act of wisdom that reflects the beauty, respect, and balance that Islam teaches in every aspect of life. 6. Don't take home unwashed prayer. Mats from the janazah. During a funeral prayer, Salat al-Janazah, many people use shared prayer mats, sometimes spread out in masjids, homes, or open areas near the graveyard. These mats, while sacred in their purpose, are often exposed to dust, tears, and the emotional heaviness of the moment. Bringing them home without washing can carry both physical and spiritual residue that affects the peace and purity of your space. In Islam, the prayer mat, sajda, holds a special place. It's where we bow down before Allah, shed our worries, and connect directly with the divine. It represents a zone of purity. But when a prayer mat has been used during a funeral, a setting where sadness, grief, and human emotion are intense, it should be cleansed before being brought back into your home prayer area. Not because it's impure in a physical sense, but because Islam teaches us to maintain spiritual cleanliness and emotional detachment from places of sorrow. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, emphasized the importance of cleanliness in worship. Just as we purify ourselves before prayer, the items we use should also be kept clean, free from any dust, dirt, or lingering energy from emotionally charged spaces. A mat used during janazah prayer might have been placed on the ground, touched by many hands, or exposed to soil near the burial area. Cleaning it with sincerity and Bismillah renews its spiritual state and restores it as a tool of light, not one carrying the weight of grief. Moreover, washing the mat is symbolic. It represents emotional cleansing, leaving the heaviness of death in Allah's hands and returning to the remembrance of life and mercy. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reminded us that none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. We honor the deceased by praying for them, not by holding on to material items tied to their passing. After attending a janazah, refresh your prayer space with new fragrance, Quranic recitation, and sincere dua. Let your prayer mat be a place of renewal and gratitude, not a reminder of loss. By keeping it pure and fresh, you protect your home from sadness and invite Allah's barakah and serenity. Remember, Islam is a religion of purity, hope, and balance. Every act of cleanliness invites divine light into your life. 7. Avoid bringing home shoes or belongings from the graveyard. It might seem harmless to bring home your shoes, scarf, or other personal items used during a burial, but Islam encourages mindfulness about anything that has touched the graveyard environment. The place of burial is sacred. It's a space where angels descend, souls are accounted for, and the unseen world is closer than we realize. For that reason, items that come into contact with that atmosphere should be cleaned or left outside before re-entering the home. Graveyards carry a heavy spiritual presence. They remind us of mortality, humility, and the temporary nature of life. But when we step back into our homes, we are returning to the world of the living, a place meant to radiate sukoon, tranquility, warmth, and divine light. To preserve that balance, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, advised believers to purify themselves after visiting graves. This includes washing hands, performing wudu, and shaking off dust from garments or shoes before stepping inside. It's a symbolic act of leaving behind grief, sorrow, and any unseen residue that may have clung to us. Shoes especially can carry graveyard dust, which is not considered impure, but should still be treated with respect. Cleaning them thoroughly, even wiping them outside the door, ensures your home remains spiritually and physically clean. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "Cleanliness is half of faith," reminding us that purity is both outward and inward. A simple act like washing your shoes or clothing after a funeral becomes an act of faith and discipline that pleases Allah. Some people also bring home items that belong to the deceased, like a scarf or tasbih, immediately after burial. While keeping something meaningful isn't wrong, it's wise to wait a few days, ensure it's washed, and then bring it into your home with dua and remembrance. The idea is not to cut emotional ties, but to ensure your space stays spiritually balanced and filled with positive, living energy. When you return home, after visiting the graveyard, pause for a moment, recite Bismillah, wash up, and make dhikr. This small routine helps shift your energy from mourning to remembrance, from heaviness to hope. Islam beautifully teaches us that life and death each have their sacred spaces, honoring that separation brings peace to both the soul of the departed and the heart of the living. 8. Don't let sorrowful energy linger. Fill your home with dhikr and Quran. After attending a funeral or visiting a graveyard, it's natural to feel heavy, emotional, or spiritually subdued. Death reminds us of our own fragility and the reality of the hereafter. However, Islam teaches us not to let this sadness linger to the point where it darkens our hearts or our homes. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, guided his followers to find comfort not through prolonged mourning, but through remembrance of Allah, dhikr, and recitation of the Quran, both of which cleanse emotional and spiritual energy. When a home absorbs prolonged grief or silence, it can start to feel heavy. The atmosphere changes, and sometimes you'll notice that peace and motivation fade. This is because emotional energy is powerful. What we think, speak, and feel impacts the spiritual tone of our surroundings. That's why the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "Do not turn your houses into graves. Indeed, Shaitan flees from the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited." This profound hadith reminds us that light must continuously be renewed through remembrance. After returning from a funeral, perform wudu to cleanse yourself, then recite verses like Ayatul Kursi, Surah Al-Baqarah, and Surah Al-Ikhlas. These chapters fill your home with divine protection, banishing negative or sorrowful energies. You can also say short adhkar such as Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar throughout the house. It's not about ritual, it's about replacing pain with peace, fear with faith, and silence with the remembrance of the one who gives life and takes it away. If grief feels overwhelming, sit with your family and make dua together for the deceased. Talk about their good deeds, seek forgiveness for them, and remind each other of Allah's promise of reunion in Jannah. This transforms sorrow into sabr, patience, and iman, faith. You can also light a soft fragrance or play peaceful Quran recitation. These simple actions uplift the mood and restore tranquility. Islam doesn't ask us to suppress grief, it teaches us to purify it. By remembering Allah, we heal without losing faith. Don't let your home remain a place of sadness. Let it echo with verses, dhikr, and hope. For every tear that turns into remembrance, Allah replaces it with nur, light, mercy, and a sense of peace that no loss can ever take away. 9. Cleanse the home with Surah Al-Baqarah or daily adhkar. After attending a funeral or spending time in places filled with grief, the spiritual environment of your home deserves gentle renewal. Islam beautifully teaches that homes, like hearts, need regular cleansing, not only from physical impurity, but from invisible energies that can affect peace, sleep, and emotional balance. One of the most powerful ways to purify your space is through the recitation of Surah Al-Baqarah, or consistent daily adhkar, remembrances of Allah. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "Indeed, shaitan does not enter the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited." Sahih Muslim. This isn't just a spiritual saying. It's a divine truth. Surah Al-Baqarah carries verses that repel negativity, bring angels of mercy into your home, and restore calm where sorrow or anxiety once lived. After returning from a funeral, playing or reciting this surah aloud invites divine protection, ensuring that no heaviness or grief lingers in your household. If reciting the entire surah feels difficult, play it from a reliable Quran recitation source with pure intention. Sit quietly, listen, and allow the words of Allah to wash over your home. This isn't just cleansing, it's healing. The verses of the Quran carry barakah, blessings, light, and divine energy that uplifts hearts and drives away sadness. Along with Surah Al-Baqarah, maintain a habit of daily adhkar. Recite Ayatul Kursi after every prayer. Say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar regularly, and begin and end your day with Bismillah and Astaghfirullah. These phrases aren't mere words, they are shields. They protect your home, your mind, and your family from anxiety, fear, and unseen harm. You can also sprinkle a little clean water while reciting Quranic verses, or burn oud, or a mild fragrance as a sunnah-inspired way of refreshing your home's atmosphere. This isn't ritualistic, it's symbolic of removing stagnation and inviting warmth, serenity, and divine remembrance into your living space. When your home becomes filled with dhikr and Quran, its energy shifts. The walls seem lighter, your heart feels calmer, and even your sleep becomes peaceful. Remember, a home where Allah is remembered is a home filled with angels. So, after moments of grief or emotional heaviness, restore your home's light by letting the Quran and dhikr flow through it. For there is no greater purifier than the remembrance of Allah. 10. End with trust in Allah. Remember death, but live with faith and hope. Death is one of the greatest reminders in life, a truth that humbles every heart. When we attend a funeral, it's not only about saying farewell to someone we loved, but also about remembering our own return to Allah. Yet Islam beautifully teaches that this remembrance should not lead to despair or fear. It should awaken faith, gratitude, and purpose. Once the burial is over and you return home, leave grief in Allah's hands and fill your soul with tawakkul, complete trust in His wisdom and mercy. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "Remember often the destroyer of pleasures, death." But he also showed through his example that a believer remembers death to live better, not to lose hope. After a funeral, it's easy for sadness to settle into your heart or home. But instead of allowing it to become despair, turn that emotion into action. Pray more sincerely, give charity in the name of the deceased, and strive to live in a way that would make them proud. This is the true Islamic response to loss, transformation through remembrance. Having tawakkul doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It means you trust Allah through it. You accept that every soul has its appointed time, and that Allah's plan is always filled with mercy, even when we don't understand it. The Quran reminds us, they plan, and Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. Surah Al-Anfal 8:30. So, when grief visits your heart, let it bring you closer to the one who controls life and death. Turn your tears into dua. Whisper your pain to Allah. He hears even what your heart can't express. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, himself wept at the loss of his loved ones, but always reminded the believers, the eyes shed tears, the heart feels pain, but we do not say, except what pleases Allah. Let that be your guide. Remember death to live wisely, pray more consciously, and cherish your time on earth. Your loved ones have merely gone ahead, and by living with faith, patience, and trust, you prepare for the most beautiful reunion, the eternal meeting in Jannah, where sorrow will never return and peace will last forever. Always keep your home filled with light, remembrance, and trust in Allah. May peace and blessings surround you. Comment, my home is protected by Allah's mercy. Subscribe to Pious Deen for more guidance.